Welcome to the weekly takeaway, what you need to know from the news. I just want to start out today by thanking those of you who are taking the time to comment on these videos. If you could do me a favor, I would appreciate it. This is a family show. If you could tone down the profanity in the comments, that would be helpful, but not mandated by any means. We're thankful for your comments. If anyone has a positive comment, they could also drop those in. YouTube actually allows those to go in that comment section, so you can drop that in there. I'm not telling anyone what to do. I'm just glad that people are watching. So thank you for participating in this conversation. A lot of great news this week, some ups, some downs, and some things that you're probably not even aware of. But we start off with our coronavirus news. And this is the conversation we seem to be having all day, every day. Thankfully, we have a lot of experts weighing in on this all of the time. We have our presidential news conference and our president and his experts. We have our governors doing their news conferences with their experts. We even have mayors who should be worrying about things like power and water and the garbage being picked up. They are doing daily news conferences with their experts. And you'd think with all of those words being said by all of those experts that we would know more than we do right now. We don't know anything. I sometimes go to my children to figure out what's going on. They seem to be more informed than the experts. But alas, we still sit through, and hopefully we're moving closer to getting to some kind of normal life again. A lot of things happening, and we'll do our best to get there. One of the interesting things that has come up in all of these conversations, though, is this phrase, one that I was not familiar with before the coronavirus, this phrase, essential worker. Essential worker. This is a phrase we hear again and again, and I know exactly what it means. It means those who are involved in caring for the folks who are struggling with this virus, and I would add my voice to the many who have said thank you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for taking care of those who need to be taken care of. I have friends who are involved in the medical industry, and I'm thankful for the work that they're doing, and many of them even volunteering their time. We're very, very grateful for the folks that are doing the work that needs to be done. I would like to make the point, however, that in the United States, we have not only the opportunity, but the right to work. We have the privilege of being able to go to work and do so that we can make money, which provides for our families. We work jobs that put food on the table and provide the clothing that our children need and help them to get the education perhaps that they need. To live the life that we would like to live, we have the opportunity, the privilege, and the right to work and earn. And in my mind, that means that all jobs are essential jobs. I think we need to be very careful at this specific moment in time not to miss what's happening. There are folks who are doing work that is absolutely needed right now. It's essential. But there are a lot of people who are just waiting to be able to go back to work because to them, as people who are trying to pay bills and do the work that is important for providing for their families, their jobs are also essential. And we're thankful for each and every one of them. Also, from our coronavirus health desk, and this is what we're talking about. There's an interesting story from China. You may or may not be aware that China has been a little bit involved in this pandemic. To what degree, we're not exactly sure. We could all debate, and perhaps in the comment section, you'd like to let us know what you think about where this virus came from and if China was involved. Some of us believe yes, and others no. That's not the point. We know that China operates differently than we do, and this story certainly reveals that. There was a Chinese journalist this last week that resurfaced. That means he was not around. He resurfaced after a month of being away, detained by the Chinese government after he, as a journalist, dared to speak out about the government's handling of the pandemic there in China. He was gone for a month after speaking out, but thankfully when he came back, he had gained a new appreciation for his country. In fact, he said this, that everything was amazing during his detainment. The police, quote, really cared about me. I don't know if making that video was one of the requirements by those police who really cared about him for getting back to work, but he put it out, and I'm thankful that he did. I'll tell you, I see stories like this one, and there's a takeaway. As bad as we sometimes feel about what's happening in our own country, I'm thankful for our Constitution. I'm thankful for the Bill of Rights that enumerates for us what we as Americans should expect from our government. We're going through a process right now as a people of arguing about the application of the Constitution and who has the ability to apply those things. Is it the states? Is it the federal government? Is it a mix of both? We're talking about the amendments that are found in the Bill of Rights, particularly the First Amendment right now. I know it doesn't always seem great, but I'm thankful that we as Americans can even have the debate and that we have a right enumerated for us in our founding documents to stand up when we see something that we don't like, to vote for politicians who will or should put in place those things that we do, and protect the freedoms that we enjoy. Around the world, this is not the case, but I'm thankful for the rights that we enjoy as Americans. In other news, related, of course, to what we're dealing with, the President announced a 60-day suspension of issuance on green cards. A 60-day suspension. This is something that will be subject to further review after the 60 days. It's an amazing thing to hear one side of our political world, the left and the right, those are the two sides, to hear one side criticize the president for not doing enough, and then conversely criticize him for doing too much. This is one of those times, and I try my best not to simply be an apologist for our president, but I think the hypocrisy needs to be called out when it becomes apparent. Again, this is one of those times. The president gave a couple of reasons for doing this. One was jobs. We're at a point in time where job loss is at historic levels. Now, this has been imposed on us by these stay-at-home orders, but more Americans are unemployed right now than at any point in history by percentage. Now, think about that. Going back to the Great Depression, there are more people unemployed right now than during the Great Depression. I'm thankful we're not living at that time, and I'm hopeful that we'll move past this quickly, that those workers will come back to jobs that are waiting for them. We don't exactly know how it's all going to unfold. But as our president talked about suspension of new applications for green cards, one of the reasons he gave was the economic reason. This is something we're just not talking about enough. He gave the economic reason. He said something like this, that there should be jobs available for Americans who want to work right now when there is record high unemployment, and that folks who are coming from other countries should not be first in line for those jobs. Now that makes sense to me. The job of the president is to protect, in part, the jobs of the citizens of the United States. And he, the president, is doing his job with this order. Again, to be evaluated, this is not racism, this is protecting American citizens. A second reason that was given, and this is an important reason, is the health of American citizens. And now think about this. We try to draw takeaways from the news. Think about this. There are American citizens across our country who have been confined to their homes. Their travel has been restricted. There are places in our country right now that people, American citizens, are not allowed to leave their homes at all for any reason. Now, we could say there are good reasons for that and there are safety reasons for that, whatever. It's happening. They're being restricted to their homes. Meanwhile, the President of the United States is saying, while American citizens are being restricted to their homes, those coming from outside of the United States, and for those following along, non-American citizens should not be able to travel into the United States for health reasons, for economic reasons, for other reasons, when American citizens cannot travel, even some within their own cities. This makes sense. But again, when we consider takeaways, here's one. One must, as I believe our president is, make decisions based on what they believe is the best for the people that they represent, and not the one that will be necessarily the most popular. It is incredible to watch the pundits, those who have opinions, we all have opinions, but those who will tack their opinion based on what the president is doing instead of what they believe to be right. He did not act soon enough. He didn't restrict enough people early enough. Now he's doing too much and restricting too many people. It's very important for us to remember that doing right is the reason you do things, not for the praise of others. And certainly our president is carrying a weight, and he appears, at least, to be doing just that. A story you may not be familiar with, and this is a story that we should all be familiar with, but one that largely has become buried in the mountain of coronavirus news, And it's this one from Canada. This last week, 22 people were killed in a shooting rampage that took place over 2 days in Nova Scotia. 22 deaths in 2 days because of a gunman that has been apprehended by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Now, criticism has been leveled at the RCMP for failing to utilize their emergency alert system to let citizens know what was taking place. Certainly an investigation is happening and will continue. Eventually we'll hear how all of this unfolded, but what a tragic event. What a tragic event, considering the fact that most of us weren't even aware of it. 22 people lost their lives, 22 families presumably are dealing with the loss of those that they care about, and we have been so overwhelmed by those who control the news that we're not hearing these stories. There's a takeaway. The takeaway is this. As I've said so many times before, get beneath the headlines. Don't let those who control information tell you what to think or what to believe or really even what to know is going on. There's so much going on around the world, good news as well as bad, things that are helpful as well as things that are not so helpful. There's stuff going on all of the time, but it's on you to figure it out. Thankfully, we have access to a lot of information. But on the other side, sometimes it's difficult when we have access to so much information, particularly when there are gatekeepers that keep that information away from us. This is an important story. And I hope that you'll follow along, that as they unfold for us what exactly happened, that you'll follow along, that you'll inform yourself, that you'll know, and that you will always remember there's a lot happening. Don't get so caught up in what's happening only in your world. And in other news, and there is other news. Again, there's a lot of bad news in the world right now, but there's other news as well. And in the category of this could only happen in Russia. In Russia, a runner ran 62 miles. Now you might be saying, that could happen anywhere, not just in Russia. 62 miles after an event that he had been training for a very long time was canceled because of the coronavirus. He decided he would continue to run, and did, 62 miles, if you didn't hear me the first 3 times, 62 miles around his bed in his very small apartment. I don't want to drive 62 miles. I'm not interested in walking 62 miles. I don't want to have anything to do with anything that includes the phrase 62 miles. But this guy ran 62 miles around his bed. Why? Because he's Russian. And there's a reason we have not heard of coronavirus cases in Russia. They're all locked in their apartment running circles around their bed. And finally, a great story for the rest of us, one that we can all relate to. An ancient Chinese noblewoman was discovered buried with the donkeys she used to play polo. I don't know if there's a takeaway or not. I just thought it was a great story, and hopefully you will as well. But there is a reason we don't often hear about the Chinese polo team. They choose to use donkeys instead of horses, which makes sense. News you can use. A lot of great things going on in the world. Again, there are good things, there are bad things, there are very confusing things. But if you look for it, you can find not only the news that matters to you and your families, but you can discern the takeaways, those things that from the information you receive, you can apply to your life. Don't be overwhelmed by the things that people are pushing on you. Figure it out. Use your discernment. Think through what you're being told. Take away what you can and move forward in a positive way. That is this week's Weekly Takeaway. We'll see you next time.